Good afternoon. Welcome to Career Week. My name is Heather Medina, and I am the Director of Alumni Engagement and Outreach for the A. James Clark School of Engineering. I have the pleasure of working with our alumni to keep them connected to the university and each other through service, social, and professional development events. I'm thrilled to moderate today's panel, Mentorship, Finding and Working with a Mentor to Enhance Your Career Development. Before we officially get started, this is just a reminder that this webinar will be recorded. By participating, you acknowledge and consent to your image, likeness, and voice being recorded. Today's panel will answer questions from the audience as well as the questions submitted in advance. When we're about halfway through today's program, we'll open the floor for real-time questions, so get your questions ready. I'd like to begin by introducing each of our panelists. Today's first panelist is Alex Folk. Alex Folk is the Executive Officer, Information Technology Laboratory at NIST. In his role, he is responsible for all administrative functions of ITL. Alex received his BS in Mechanical Engineering and his MBA both from the University of Maryland. Alex, we will ask this of each of our panelists, but could you start off by telling us how mentorship, being a mentor or a mentee, has benefited your career trajectory?
Great. Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for the opportunity to be here today. I would say in hindsight, it probably was the one critical kind of turning point in my career, honestly, was having a good mentor. I actually co-opted through the University of Maryland in my engineering degree, and I had a mentor as part of that co-op, and he was just the shared values we had and his willingness to take time with me and really challenge me to look into myself in terms of where I wanted to go in my career, really established and set up kind of a way of thinking as I've progressed since that time. So I would say it's been a real critical resource and tool that has probably informed many of my decisions since then. Thank you.
We look forward to hearing more as the conversation continues. Our next panelist is Steve Kerber. Steve Kerber is the Vice President of Research for Underwriters Laboratory and Director of UL's Fire Safety Research Institute. He leads a fire safety research team dedicated to addressing the world's unresolved fire risks and emerging dangers to reduce death, injury, and loss from fire. He received his bachelor's and master's degrees in fire protection engineering from the University of Maryland and a Ph.D. from Lund University in Sweden. Steve, welcome.
Thank you very much, Heather. Great to join everybody. Same question, right?
Same question. How has mentorship benefited your career?
Yeah, much like Alex, I mean, I can't think of a major career choice or change that wasn't influenced by mentorship. The guiding through my career, absolutely, from what PhD program to go to, through changing of jobs, through taking on additional roles and going for different promotions. I'd say every single one of those was heavily influenced by a mentor, and now recently by mentees. It's amazing the benefit that you can get that goes both ways, and I know we'll talk a lot more about that.
Thank you. We're looking forward to hearing more. Our third panelist is Amy Murdock. Amy Murdock is a principal at Code Consultants and has excelled in several market sectors, including retail, mixed use, corporate, education, hospitality, and entertainment. She provides creative solutions to code challenges that are in line with CCI's vision. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Fire Protection Engineering from the University of Maryland and is a registered fire protection engineer in multiple states. Amy, thank you for joining us today. What would you like to know the audience to know about how mentorship has impacted your professional journey?
Hi, Heather. Good to chat with you again, and thank you all for being here. And thanks for inviting me to discuss this. Mentors have helped me personally, not only educationally. Oh, this would be my dog. I'm her mentor, apparently. They helped me not only personally, but spiritually and educationally. And my mentorship started even when I was young, and I'm sure we'll get into this later, but, to start with my grandma teaching me, no task is too small and give your all. You never think about your mentors from when you were little until sometimes you're old, right? Or seasoned. And moving through so many mentors that have touched my life and my career, again, personally, spiritually, educationally, to a partner, a business partner of mine who mentored me in the responsibility of being an owner. When I became a partner in the firm, I was young and he was seasoned, and he took me under his wing and mentored me to the importance of morals and ethics in business practices, to working with others and for others, and continuing to be a strong professional engineer. Mentorship starts super young and continues all the way through. So I think it's super important. And to Steve's point of having people that now that I am mentoring, wow, does that really open my mind? So I think overall, globally, mentorship, whether you're a mentee or a mentor, is a phenomenal experience for anyone to participate in.
Thank you. We look forward to hearing more about your experience. Our next panelist is Kiva Varvikas. She is the Deputy Chief Engineer at the Maryland Department of Transportation, Maryland Aviation Administration, currently assisting the Chief Engineer with overseeing the Division of Planning and Engineering for both BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport and the Martin State Airport. Kiva holds a civil engineering degree from the University of Maryland College Park and an MBA from the University of Baltimore. Please welcome Kiva. Kiva, can you share a little insight on how mentorship has benefited your career?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm always excited to talk about my journey. And so in saying that, I'll say that maybe 2 years out of undergrad, I worked for the firm that I interned with towards the end of my educational career at Maryland. And I knew I wanted to go to grad school, but I wasn't sure which program to choose. So at the time, I went to my supervisor, who at that time had become a mentor to me. And I asked him what he thought about going to grad school for business, versus engineering. Now, this gentleman, he came up through the ranks of construction management without a degree at all. But I really respected his opinion because he had the worldview to see what types of skills would be beneficial. And he gave me the advice to go to business school. And that had a direct impact on where I am today, working for the airport. So over the past 12 years since I earned my MBA, I've had the opportunity to apply my business knowledge on technical projects. And I've also had the opportunity to learn the business side of so many industries, including aviation, defense, construction, grant management. I mean, it's really opened up a lot of doors for me. And I would say it's definitely because of my mentor. And I just wanted to piggyback off of what Amy said about those intangibles of integrity and professionalism, the things that aren't necessarily taught in a classroom. That's what mentors really do bring to the table.
Great, thank you. Our final panelist today is Dr. Dorothy Zucker. Dr. Dorothy Zucker retired as the Associate Director for the Earth Science Division at the Goddard Space Flight Center. She was responsible for managing all of the internal operations of the division, including budgets, workforce, and travel. She's a subject matter expert for Earth Sciences for the agency's Technical Capabilities Assessment Team. Her academic training includes a BA in physics from the College of Notre Dame of Maryland, an MS degree and a PhD in nuclear engineering from the University of Maryland. While at Maryland, she earned her reactor operator's license for the research reactor and taught numerous undergraduate classes and labs. She also has served as the center's mentoring and coaching champion. She is a certified integral coach and an accredited associate certified coach with the International Coaching Federation. Please welcome Dr. Dorothy Zucker.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Mentoring, absolutely essential to me. As you heard, I retired. When I first joined engineering, there were very few women. And so I had mentors that helped me to navigate a lot of obstacles. And when I graduated and was able to work professionally in my field, I realized that I needed to pay it back. And so that when Goddard Space Flight mentoring program, I became a mentor. And I can't say enough about it. It's equally rewarding to be a mentee and a mentor. As a mentee, you get somebody's knowledge and experience and support and encouragement and opportunities that maybe if you were left to your own devices, you would never have, because they introduce you to people and they introduce you to experiences and they suggest things that maybe you wouldn't think you were ready to do on your own. And then as a mentor, you get to basically pay it back. And as I think Amy said, you hear these things, you hear yourself speaking as a mentor to yourself. And sometimes I'll be discussing something with a mentee and I'll go, boy, that's a really good idea. Maybe I ought to try that myself. So you not only help other people, but you learn and you make connections outside of your own little work bubble, which is extremely important because you learn how things are connected at that point. And when I was employed at Goddard, one of the things I said is, I may not know who to ask if a mentor asked me a question. I said, but I know how to find out who to ask.
Thank you. It was great to hear a personal detail from each of you, so thank you for sharing. Our audience has submitted some questions in advance of today's events. To cover the most questions, I'll direct each one at 2 of you, but if someone else would like to chime in, feel free to do so. So let's dig in. We'll start off with how someone can go about finding or building a relationship with a mentor. Alex, what's a solid foundation to build a mentor-mentee relationship?
I would say both as a mentor currently and having been a mentee for many, many years, I think a shared value system, finding someone who has some shared values with you, and there's the traditional values of trust, integrity, but maybe cultural background. It might be just some experiences or common interests you have to kind of build on, like I would say a beachhead to build a relationship from, and utilizing that as a way to build a trust. And trust is the key to any mentorship, mentee relationship, coachee relationship. And if that can get established, I found that, the willingness to really open up and have a candid conversation about your fears, your strengths, your passions, your hopes are the critical pieces to standing up a really strong, mentor-mentee relationship from where I've come from.
Great. Thank you. Kiva, some early career professionals may hesitate to reach out to people in leadership roles. Could you share some strategies someone might take to build a relationship with leaders in their field?
Absolutely. It could be a bit intimidating at times to reach out to professionals in their industry of interest. However, I want to at least say this. Many professionals, yes, I think we all created in our mind that they're so busy, but a big part of the success of many is knowing that it's also important to make it your work to help other people. And I wanted to at least impart that on the audience to understand that that is normally the way that most professionals think, and that they will do almost anything within their power to impart the wisdom that they have on people coming in to the industry, or even considering coming into the industries or the workspaces that they're in. In terms of ways to get involved, sometimes it's best to find out, a bit of what Alex even referenced, of finding out what they're involved in. If they're a part of professional organizations, many times those organizations have a student group or a student chapter, and getting involved in those groups could be a way or an in to beginning that networking opportunity or that networking relationship. Reaching out on LinkedIn, I've done it myself. Actually, there's a new deputy administrator for one of the transportation administrations. I literally kind of cold called her by sending her a message, and she responded. So there are ways to just put yourself out there, and you have to remember that a lot of times people don't get to where they are unless they ask or unless they say something. And I know it's very scary, but you have to remember the worst that someone could ever say is no. So you have to put yourself out there.
That's a great tip. Thank you. That brings us to the why. Why mentor-mentee relationships can be beneficial for both parties. Amy, what do you think each party can gain from a mentor-mentee relationship?
So I think what you can gain is a couple things. Vulnerability, to Alex's point, that's such a good thing, I think, for both a mentor and a mentee to grow and learn in. Being vulnerable to know what you're doing wrong or what you're doing right or what you need to change. Knowledge, obviously, is another one that you'll get. You're answering, while you're, to Dorothy's earlier point, when you're answering a difficult question, it actually sometimes as a mentor, you're thinking almost on sometimes yourself also of, gee, I'm giving this person a really great idea. Wow, am I actually implementing something to that extent? And for if you're lucky as a mentee, you're actually going to be challenged to become this better person or to learn more and to grow more, and what you can even do to better yourself. So I think there's absolutely a gain on both ends of that spectrum that just can't be matched except in that type of a relationship.
Thank you. Steve, any thoughts on what each party can gain from a mentor-mentee relationship?
Amy brings up tremendous points, and I really think the critical part here is that it is a two-way relationship, and the amount that can be gained. And I think in my experience, the biggest thing gained is perspective and really efficiency, because you're learning from experience, you're learning how to avoid mistakes that have already been made. And really a big component of this perspective for me in my leadership recently is around generational differences. And it's amazing to think that right now in our organization, we've got 5 generations working together. And I mean, whether it's being mentored by a baby boomer or trying to have a mentee from Gen Z, I'm constantly gaining perspective from both ends of that spectrum. And it really helps my sense making. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've gone to mentees and it's like, you've got to help me understand this. I'm experiencing this. I think this might be a generational thing. I'm not quite sure. I got a little bit of a blind spot here. Can you help me really understand what I should do here? And as they look at you with big eyes of like, wait a minute, you're asking me about your decision making that you need to make. But I think it builds the trust, coming back to that trust word, which I think you're going to hear a lot as we go here. And I think that enables an environment where both people gain is that trust gets built.
Many in our audience today might be, members of Gen Z or early career professionals. Amy, thinking about the relationship, as a mentor, what do you expect from a mentee?
Oh, so I'll go back to, I think it was Kiva who mentioned it. I am one of those very busy people. You look at my calendar and I have meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. And so I absolutely want to give back. And so some of my mentees, they schedule meetings with me because they know how busy I am. I'm also a mom. I have multiple jobs, so they're also very respectful of that time. And so I think a really important part of that is respecting people's calendars, their schedules, their busyness, and don't be fearful to ask the question, because the worst answer you can get, like Kiva said, was a no. So I think that is one thing, that and being prepared. To Steve's point, being prepared to have, if I come and ask you a question, answer. It's okay to be truthful and honest on an answer and tell me I'm full of it, or tell me I just don't get it. Be truthful, be prepared. If you tell me, hey, let's meet and let's talk about my growth path on the business side of a company. well, be prepared to talk about the company's business side and what you understand or what you don't understand on it. Don't just come and be like, okay, can you tell me what I'm supposed to do? You know, that's kind of not what you're expecting as a mentor. You kind of want the person to want to do something, you know. So that would be kind of my suggestion in those roles and what you would expect, or what I would expect at least.
Dot, what about you? What do you expect from a mentee?
I'm sorry, Heather, who was that question for?
Dot.
Oh, sorry about that.
It wasn't responding. That's why I wasn't unmuting. I wanted to tag something that both Amy and Kiva said about people being busy, possible mentors. One of the things that I ran into in my own career was that there was somebody that I really admired and wanted to work with and wanted to learn from them, and I procrastinated. And then they went on to another job, or they retired, or we lost contact with them. So one of the suggestions I would make is just be brave and ask them sooner rather than later, because like other people have said, all they can say is no.
And Kiva, in your experience, what makes a good mentee?
I think it's important to show initiative. I think that's what, many of us were kind of referring to. As Amy said, come to the meetings prepared to ask questions or to discuss a particular topic. And I can sit and tell you my life story, but that's useless if you want to know how to improve your resume or why you're not getting any calls from potential employers. So if there is an opportunity to hone in on a particular topic or area of concern, that is the best way to utilize your time with your mentor. So that is what I truly expect is, decent organization. I mean, you don't have to be completely type A, but also just having a general idea of what you need help on. Or if their conversation is on, determining what you need help on, that's even a topic to discuss. Because, I think many of us, who have been, in our respective industries for some time, we know what the top 10 or top 5, qualities are. And so we could go through that and discuss it with you, and we can go through all of those and figure out ways to improve or to build on those skills. So I think it's important to just show initiative and to be prepared.
Great. Thank you. Alex, I understand that you live by the motto, to be effective as a mentor is to be interested. Can you tell us more about that?
So I can't take full ownership for the quote, but I would say that being interesting is something that comes very easy, but being active and engaged and present in your conversation with an individual and being willing to ask questions to learn is a really strong way of creating communication that might not otherwise occur. It's easy to have a cursory conversation when you're out in a social event, but the ability to have genuine interest in the needs, the hopes, the ambitions of another individual is really what triggers those deeper conversations where you can really provide the most help and assistance. So I learned a long time ago that the more active you can be in genuine questions to people, not yes or no questions, but questions that can get them to really think about, themselves a little bit is really the trigger point to getting into a strong, I would say, value added relationship, whether it's mentoring or not. But in terms of mentoring and coaching, if you can get to that point with someone where they feel genuinely interested in engaging you, that's where you can really make some breakthroughs and have some real value added help for people.
Excellent. Dot, you've been a mentor to many professionals over the course of your career, many of them fellow Terps. Can you share how you've shown interest in your mentees and helped them to grow professionally?
Well, one of the first things I do is if they ask me to be their mentor, I introduce myself, usually electronically these days, and then ask them what are a couple of the topics that they're thinking about working on. why did they come to mentoring? And then during the first conversation, we generally try to hone that down. And sometimes you can combine them and sometimes you can't. But what I usually ask them is, what are your worries and concerns, and where do you see yourself in 5 years? And how can we help? How can we work on that? So it's a very it's full contact mentoring. I mean, they have to come into it with some ideas, and then I come in with some ideas, and then we work it. And then what I do with typically is we set up meetings regularly, because I find that usually about every other week, sometimes every week if the person's really struggling, but every other week, because that if you go too long, then you get disengaged and it's like you have to start from scratch. So I ask good questions. I very seldom answer yes or no, and I don't really expect them to answer yes or no. So, and I would typically probe until I get something other than a yes or no. So, and the other thing I tell them is, hey, it's like a Vegas thing. What we talk about stays here. I don't call your boss. I don't call your parents. I don't call your significant other. It's between us. If I want to share it with someone for a reason to help you, I will ask permission.
And maybe you could tell us a little bit more about some of these successful relationships. You know, how did it start? What did it become? Maybe what topics did you work on together?
Well, probably one of the most difficult one I ever had was I had a young woman I was working with. She was a Ph.D. astronomer, but she was not happy doing astronomy and doing the proposal and competing. She wanted to just do the astronomy, but she was very active with students and she just loved that. And when we would sit and talk, she would just glow when she talked about the students. And it took probably about a year of working with her to have her see that this was what she needed to do, because I couldn't tell her that. That wasn't my job. She had to make the decision herself, because what she had figured out was I either have to be an astronomer, or if I go do and work with students, just students, then I've given up on my astronomy and I've thrown all that research and all that effort away. And eventually, through a lot of discussion and soul searching, she reached the conclusion that no, you always have that with you, and that's just part of you, who you are and your career profession. You don't leave it behind, and it's part of what you can add to what you help the next generation. And she actually finally did make the switch, and she started a program for young people on, you know, what's astronomy, an after school program on what's astronomy. And as far as I know, she's still doing it. We're still in contact, but she loves it. Changed it.
Wow, that's great. Steve, how about you? Can you share some of your successful mentor-mentee experiences?
I think the most successful ones really turned into kind of an informal structure. I think in many ways, I think they started with a recurring meeting, and then it kind of evolved into like text messages, and then kind of everything in between. Because I think there was lots of questions and decisions and stuff like that didn't want to wait for a calendar invite or didn't want to fit some sort of recurring schedule. So I think a few of the successful ones have really evolved that way. People have already talked about the mutual respect and the personal connection. I think in many cases, I work with a lot of Terps, so the conversations would frequently begin with talking about the basketball game or something like that, and then you just keep listening, and then you start realizing it's like, okay, this is a segue into another mentorship conversation. Let's go ahead and get out of the kitchen area and go over into the office and have the conversation and figure out what's really going on, what's the pending choice that needs to be made, or what's on your mind, what's going on. And I think that informal nature I've found tends to be the most stickiest, when they find out that, again, building on what Amy said, you need to have that respect of people being busy. This is not you text me at 9 p.m. at night and I'm going to answer you immediately. But once you gain that relationship, it's like, all right, they put it out there, and then you work in getting back to them, and that becomes a comfortable arrangement.
Thank you. Finding that common ground, that seems to be kind of a theme for a lot of the tips that we're talking about. And it's a good segue into kind of the next topic today. Many of you are involved in professional and civic organizations. Kiva, you're a member of the Airport Minority Advisory Council, the Northeast chapter of AAAE, and an active board member for Meals on Wheels of Central Maryland. How have those experiences played a role in forming mentoring relationships for you?
Yes, actually AAAE, AAAE is the American Association of Airport Executives, and the Airport Minority Advisory Council, or AMAC, are the two professional organizations that I am a member of. And you mentioned also Meals on Wheels, which has been a phenomenal experience for me. But membership is just the entry point. But once you're in, it's important to take full advantage of the opportunity to network. So as I mentioned before, I'm speaking from the perspective of being a member, because many of these organizations have student membership opportunities. So my participation personally has led me to the opportunity to chair committees and to start initiatives that didn't exist before. For example, within AMAC, I am the subcommittee chair for the internship and fellowship program. And I led a team of other aviation professionals, not just engineering. We have folks who are leading, their HR departments at their respective companies, marketing, finance, that runs the whole gambit. And we were able to create this internship program that is geared towards serving college students. And I want to give you the opportunity to learn about our world of aviation. It's my quick plug. There is still time to apply for that internship program. So, but in terms of forming mentoring relationships, when you're involved on a committee and when you step up to get involved or take the lead on an organizational initiative, working with others is a natural way of networking. And you get to learn from others and you build relationships. And because of my work on the committee, I was able to work with the directors of airports and other chiefs or C-suite professionals. I am not an executive director of an airport. I don't run an airport, but now I have that direct line of communication to pick up the phone or email literally the director of like the Long Beach airport or other large airports if I wanted to talk about career advice or career advice as a woman running an airport. Currently, there's only maybe not even a handful of women who run airports. So if I wanted to get advice, that's now a direct line of communication, and the door is open for me to communicate with these people. And kind of alluding to what Steve mentioned, having sort of an informal mentorship relationship. However, it also, it goes the other way around. Now I can serve as a mentor to other people who maybe I've worked on those committees with. So it's not only networking, but it's the sharing of ideas and growing as professionals while in this common space focused on an initiative for a greater good.
Excellent, thank you. Steve, you're a 13-year veteran of the fire service and a fellow of the Society of Fire Protection Engineers. How important has mentorship or participation in professional networking organizations been for your career?
I've met countless people through the professional networking organizations that I've been able to build trust with over time, and many of those relationships build into mentoring relationships. Really, it comes down to, it's easy to find people that are on the same path as you. And I think if you're on the same path, regardless of where you are on that path, it kind of allows you to learn from those that have come before you and influence those that are on a similar path that you're on. And I forget who said it before, but it was the getting out of the work bubble, I think, is another concept that's so important, that we all tend to be influenced. I mean, I work with a lot of fire departments in our work, and in many ways, I mean, those organizations, they tend to serve a local community. So they're influenced by their local community. They learn from their local community. In many ways, they evolve over time based on the folks that revolve through those organizations. But you can see the ones that really excel are the ones that pop their head up out of their local community and start talking with the communities around them. They talk to similar communities like theirs all over the country or all over the world. And you see that their learning curve just advances tremendously because they had that willingness, they had that opportunity to go ahead and pop their head up. And typically that's through professional organizations that enable that. And I think all of us, it's, you're looking for that extra source of ideas. You're looking to speed up your learning. You're looking for those best practices. And ultimately we created an environment where we're standing on each other's shoulders. I mean, so we can move forward versus creating the same mistakes over and over again, or constantly following the same learning curve. And I think that's what we're all saying here is that you, as you're influenced by this, you feel the need to give back to it. And the speed at which we're then able to evolve goes so much faster through these relationships and really enabled by the professional organizations.
Amy, you've been a leader in many of these professional organizations and active in advancing women in engineering. Do you see these as opportunities to create meaningful relationships, and what has your experience been?
Yeah, it is really interesting to me, especially your comment of being a part of the women organizations. I'm a part of a local St. Louis group called the St. Louis Forum, which is a invited only kind of group of executive women. And I actually get to meet with a lot of young women who are on trajectories that they're not really sure, and discuss with them opportunities, where they might want to go, where they could go, what is their background. Some of them, come from a tough background. Some of them come from a perfect background. And what does that mean? And where do they go? And it is absolutely a really wonderful thing to be able to give back and to be a part of that. But then I think even further, for me being a part of the St. Louis Forum, it's common mentorship among my peers, where I think that's another form of mentorship that a lot of people just don't think about. When I sit around a table, at a luncheon with these great executive women, and we just talk, and maybe we don't realize that we're all being mentors to each other. Or if I'm with Steve at a Society of Fire Protection Engineer luncheon, and we're sitting around the table, all of us collectively talking together, it is a great thing to be a part of these professional organizations, and in realizing that you absolutely can be a mentor to someone else, but looking for those opportunities where you're just sitting around a table with your peers and all talking together, about the industry, your profession, what's changing, what's not changing, and collectively becoming mentors to each other without even realizing it. I think there's a lot to be said for that as a part of the professional organizations.
Thank you. Now it's time for my plug. Many organizations, like the Alumni Association, can play a role in making important career connections. Join and give back. Everyone's welcome. We're changing topics a little bit. We focused our discussion on mentorship, which is generally an organic, informal relationship. But as one progresses in their career, they might ponder the benefits of working with an executive coach. Dot, you're an executive, or you're an accredited associate certified coach with the International Coaching Federation. Can you explain what the difference for you is between executive coaching and mentorship, and why that's important to you?
I try to keep those two things fairly separate in my mind. Mentoring is, to me, is a relationship between someone that is experienced and knows the ropes, somebody who wants to learn from them. So you don't necessarily do all of the talking as a mentor, but you do a lot of it, because the mentee comes to you typically for advice or for suggestions. Sometimes they're confused in their path, and they know that you've traveled a similar path and you may be able to help them. You give them assignments and you make suggestions to them, but typically you're sort of pulling the strings, so to speak, in my mind. A coach is more of a walking down the path together and learning from each other. Coaching, I consider more personal development, intense personal, increase your personal knowledge of yourself. So you get to know, like one of you said, you need to know what you do well and what you do poorly. Sometimes people don't know what they do poorly. And if you just tell them that, they don't believe you. So you have to work with them, especially if it's a problem in their job or their personal life. You have to work with them to make them realize that this is a problem and you can work on it, and it's up to them to work on it. And as a coach, either a professional coach or a personal coach or a business coach, you can help them work on that. For instance, if someone is, I one time coached a young man who waited until the end of the meeting to make a suggestion. And I said, well, you know, people are walking out the door and you've had some great ideas, but they've never heard them because you let them get away before you said anything. So one of the things we worked on was making him more comfortable getting into the conversation, because he was terrified. He was a minority. And he said, well, I don't want to seem stupid. I don't want to embarrass myself. And I said, well, you don't necessarily have to, you know, don't throw out stuff that is just really wild, but participate in the conversation, make comments, add to the conversation as it goes along, but don't sit there absolutely silent. So we worked on what he could say in a meeting, sort of boilerplate thing, and then him getting more comfortable making comments. And now he's a senior executive. I think he's moved on to NASA headquarters. But that to me is the difference between coaching and mentoring. Coaching is more of a growth and development exercise, whereas mentoring is sort of, you know, the Padawan and the student and the Jedi.
Thank you. Alex, I know you have some experience with executive coaching as well. Would you like to weigh in with your experience, and how does someone know if it's right for them?
Well, DOT's definitely a hard act to follow. I was actually taking notes. That was a great explanation, because that question comes up all the time. And I would admit that keeping the line, the delineation is sometimes the hardest part in the world for me. And I think it's part and parcel. It's just so easy to get interested in something someone else is doing that you start, you know, trying to help them and engineer the solution. But I would say I look at coaching and mentoring somewhat as a continuum, and as someone's, you know, I've had mentees that I've actually turned into coaching relationships over the years, and I spend a lot of time trying to walk that line with them. But I would say that really the biggest delineation, and it's probably building on what Dot had presented, is someone matures in their career, and you're looking at someone looking less for the how and starting to get into the why and the where I'm going to go in my career is somewhat driving that transition. Early on, it's the how do you do this? How have you done this? What has your experience been in this space? And what can you present to me? So the mentee's asking all the questions. When you drop into the coach role, or when I drop into the coach role, you're flipping the coin on the end, and a lot of the questioning is coming from the coach. You're leading questions, open-ended questions, to try to, as I like the way Dot put it, is you're walking with them. You're not leading them any longer. You're on the path with them, and helping them, you know, find those solutions.
Thank you. We have a few minutes left for live questions from the audience today. So we'd invite guests to submit your questions to the panel either by raising your Zoom hand using the feature on your chat box, or submitting the question directly through the chat. When it's your turn, I will ask you to unmute yourself, and at that time you can ask your question. So we'll just give you a second to populate any thoughts you might have. I'll look for raised Zoom hands or some chats. I did have some questions come through the chat during the program, and I'll direct the first one to Dot. You alluded to a lot of long-term relationships that you've had in your career, seeing people really advance. The question is, what's the etiquette of keeping in touch with a mentor over long periods of time, and how do you keep that connection fresh?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Well, usually, I mean, it sort of eases off. We declare a beginning and an end. So that sort of focuses that. So we know that the regular meetings stop. And then we just sort of keep in touch. Sometimes I would see them at the office. Sometimes we'd see them at a social event. Some of them live near me. I would see them then. We send each other cards at the holidays. We just say hello, and it's not an intense relationship, but it's sort of like networking where you just sort of keep in touch. And then every once in a while, I'll have one call me and say, I need to come talk to you for an hour, and we'll do that. And then we're done. So it's very organic and informal.
Anyone else want to share any tips about maintaining relationships long-term? Okay, another one that came through is what advice would you have to individuals who are trying to find their voice or their path?
Wow. Well, you're trying to find your voice and your path. You really have to become honest with yourself. You know, in sitting down with a mentor, they'll probably pepper you with a ton of questions. And then you have to be honest when you answer those questions. And sometimes it's that whole thing of looking at yourself in a mirror, you know, and figuring out how to find that voice and find that path. That would be my comment to someone who might be struggling with something like that.
So Heather,
Go ahead, Alex.
I was just going to say, because it's kind of ironic. My daughter gave me a book over the holidays because she's journaled for years and years and years. And it's funny talking about learning from someone who I've mentored. And she gave me a book on journaling because she acknowledged that I was kind of trying to find my path a little bit. My voice is usually not an issue, but you know, you know, you're always learning. And I honestly have been journaling since the holidays, and it is amazing the impact that's had on me to, I think to Amy's point, you know, show my own vulnerabilities, to be true to myself, be honest with myself first, which kind of empowers my ability to start to vocalize kind of what I'm thinking, what I'm doing. And I've already seen people make comments. Alex, you're more open than I've traditionally seen you be. And I think some of it is just that honesty, as Amy had indicated. And my tool has been journaling. Just simple, you know, diary, journal, whatever you want to call it, has been such an incredible tool for me.
I wanted to add, you know, that I really liked what both Alex and Amy said about, you know, having honesty and also kind of organizing your thoughts in a way. I would add to that to even say that there comes a time when it's important to really organize, I guess, your path forward. So once, you know, if there is something that you think you want to do, speak with your mentor about it. And as the plan starts to come together, make sure the plan is sustainable. Because I think it's really easy to get hot and heavy about something, you know, in the moment, and even to say, you know, this is where I envision, you know, where I want to be. But once you start to really lay out the plan, make sure that the plan itself is sustainable. I think that's really important. And in terms of finding your voice, it's important to know that there's not always someone out there who's exactly you or like you. So you may be the only one like you doing that thing that you think you want to do. For instance, I work in engineering, but I am an engineer who I have so many hobbies, like so many things that most engineers don't do. You know, I knit. I love knitting. I love doing all kinds of things. I mean, I think a lot of us are type A. So, you know, you meet people all the time who run, you know, marathons and all that. I do that too. But I think that you can't necessarily, and that was just kind of a soft example, but you can't necessarily always say, well, I want to do this thing, but I haven't seen anybody out there doing it the way I think I want to do it. You might be the only one. So, you know, it's important to know that you can't necessarily find someone that you want to mimic, and because that's going to make you very uncomfortable because you're not being true to yourself of who you are. So it's very possible to live in a world where you're doing, you know, a particular job or you're working in a particular industry, but you're doing it your way. And I think that they can coexist. So be open to that, be open to sort of forging your own path, and creating what that looks like.
I would just add to that what are you passionate about? I mean, what gets you excited? What do you feel that you can do for a long period of time that you can contribute to? And as far as the finding the voice is, I mean, today's world, it's amazing. There's so many outlets for a voice. There's so many opportunities to have a voice, whether it's out in the open, it's not out in the open, it's digital, it's not digital. And there's so many ways. I mean, journaling. I mean, it can be from that to everything to the biggest platform that you want to create. So the options today are tremendous for that sort of thing, and really it can change with your comfort level, which I think is fun as well, as you start talking about amplifying that voice and using it the way you want to use it.
Dot, did you have something to add?
And thanks for mentioning journaling, because when I begin coaching someone, the first thing I ask them to do is buy a journal. And I tell them buy one they like, because they're going to be spending some serious time with it. And it's only for them. I won't read it. If they want to read me something out of it, that's their choice. But the comment is that I have them journal a little bit every day, however they want. Some do it on their phone, some do it on their computer, some use paper. And then I ask them about once every 2 or 3 meetings, roughly once a month, to go back and look and see if there are any trends that they notice. And this is one thing that's interesting regarding what Amy was saying. When you have someone that is lost and wants some help, and they may not have access to a coach or a mentor, but if they're just willing to do that and look at trends and be really sort of brutally honest with themselves, you can learn a lot about that. And it's extremely important. And also, like now, I mean, with the pandemic, people should be journaling. I have a young lady that's a good friend of my daughter's, and she wants to write. And I told her, Caitlin, you got to write all about this pandemic, because at the end of it, you should write a book. Because she's now in nursing school, but she was physician's assistant school, but she was an EMT, and I can't even imagine what she saw doing that.
Thank you. We're just about out of time, but I'd like to take this opportunity to allow our panelists to share closing thoughts. Or to put it another way, why is developing mentorship so important to you? Anything you haven't shared yet today? And we'll go in reverse alphabetical order this time. So I'll start with you, Dot.
The world changes so fast that the only way to keep up is to learn from others.
Thank you. Kiva?
You know, mentorship is important to me because it's more important for me to build and pour into people than anything else. You know, all of the different industries that I've talked about that I've had the pleasure of working in, they'll only get better as long as we have young people and new professionals, budding professionals entering the industry and keep continuing on the work that's already been done. We need your new and innovative and engaging ideas, and we also need your energy. So I welcome those who are looking to enter a mentorship mentee relationship, because the sky's the limit. We can only get better from here.
Thank you. Amy?
As far as mentorship and why do it, you giving back, helping others. For me personally, in professionally, succession planning for me. I mean, at some point, I'm teaching those that hopefully will take my job. And if I think back as when I started as a young engineer and moving within the ranks of my own company, I can't move up if someone's not there to do the work also. So, I mean, mentorship for yourself personally is super important. But even bigger than that is just giving back. And even when you're a mentee, keeping those relationships, connecting back with those that helped you in the past, sending them a quick picture, a quick text. One of my own mentors, he messaged me just a couple months ago. I'm a grandpa, sent me a picture of his new granddaughter. I mean, that's great. So it's just such a wonderful thing to have in your life.
Steve?
Amy, we're not young anymore. I mean, what happened? I don't know. I don't know where this whole talking about not being young anymore, it hurts. I mean, mentorship is important to me because it enables progress and continuous learning. And I mean, I love the fact that I get to work and lead a scientific organization where it's all about learning and continuing to learn and new ways of thinking, strategic thinking, different ways of approaching work. And I mean, really, the saying, that's the way we've always done it, drives me nuts. And I think it's mentorship that enables the ability to speed that up, to make progress, to know when things should be the same, because you can talk to the people that have been there and can explain why it's done that way. And then, of course, you've got the up and comers that will tell you when things need to change, or be brave enough to ask the question, why is it the way it is? And then you can all move on from there. And I think the root of that is mentorship.
Thank you. Now, Alex.
So I've come to realize that mentorship is probably one of the best kept secrets. And for very selfish reasons, I get so much more out of being a mentor. I tell people all the time, and they're like, Alex, thank you so much for your time. I'm like, you have no idea. I walked away with 10 times more information than you did, because I have the experience of being on both sides in part. But it is, I mean, just everyone's point. This has been fantastic because the energy it gives me and the excitement it gives me and the appreciation. I don't know if it was Steve or Amy, someone was mentioning the number of generations we're working with right now, and I'm on the farther end of the generations these days. I'm excited for the new generations, and I think a lot of it is because I've had the opportunity to be a mentor to some of the younger generations and see their aspirations and their energy and their motivations and their willingness to be energized in spaces that I'm just not even attuned to any longer. And so it's just, to me, it's like one of the things I carve the time out, and that's probably one of the most exciting parts of my day is when I get a chance to coach or mentor. So I got a lot from my early mentor, and that probably motivated me over the years. But as I've transitioned a little bit, I'm coming to find out that, he got an awful lot out of me too. And we laugh about that even today. He goes, oh, Alex, that was selfish. I got stuff out of you too. So don't you worry. But I think if it's an opportunity to mentor when you're young or be a mentee, and then you will likely transition to a mentor down the road. I agree. Dot. It is a rush. You see them succeed. It's like being a parent all over again.
Well, thank you. And thank you to our audience for your thoughtful questions, and to the entire panel for your insightful replies. I'm confident that our audience will think back to this discussion many times as they progress in their careers. As a reminder, today's event was brought to you by the University of Maryland Alumni Association and the Engineering Alumni Network. Career Week is a week-long event series to help alumni like you conquer, steer, and advance your career. A recording of this panel today will be shared with all attendees. Thank you, and go Terps.